for being here, and welcome to Mark Lennon's talk, and I guess you already have had a preview of that. I'm Bente Torjussen, the Executive Director of the AVA Gallery and Art Center, and it's really very special for us to have Mark have this exhibition for a number of reasons. And also, we are, of course, looking very much forward to the talk, and you are as eager as can be, I know.
As can be.
But Mark has a long and wonderful and very special relationship to AVA. And he has participated in a number of exhibitions over the years and demonstrated his unique photographic talent. But one thing that struck me right now with this exhibition and your other involvement with AVA, namely during the renovation in 2006, 2007, and you renovated this entire old former factory building. You were an integral part of that as the leader and owner of the Institutional Recycling Network. And there was so much that was, taken down, demolished, and would have gone to the landfill if it hadn't been for Mark and his crew. And you may or may not know, but AVA received, or the whole team that worked on the renovation were awarded with a LEED Gold certification, and what Mark did was an integral part of that, what he and his company did. And the amazing thing is that of all the stuff that was demolished and hauled out and sorted carefully in various dumpsters, 95% of it was recycled, and only 5% went to the landfill. Now this brings me to your work, because there is such a contrast. So much of your work is about the fleeting moments, about the ephemeral qualities, about, you capture the water and in the next moment it has changed. So there you are dealing with the fleeting moments. With the renovation you dealt with sustainability and durability. You're really thinking of creating for the future, and there is something really beautiful in these two, the fleeting moment and building to last. And that it just struck me as a wonderful quality about you and your work. And so, Margaret would like to say a few words. Margaret Jacobs, our exhibition coordinator. She is she with our wonderful interns, and one of them is here, Nina Finnegan. And they were responsible for the beautiful hanging of the show. And so she is going to formally introduce you as a photographer. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Yeah, a lot of what I have Bente went into detail too. So Mark Lennon of New London, New Hampshire has two passions, photography and environmentalism. He studied biology and forestry and works in waste reduction and recycling. He co-founded and co-owns a company in Concord, New Hampshire called IRN, the Reuse and Recycling Network, which takes surplus furniture from municipalities and matches it with charities around the world. Lennon was instrumental in the waste reduction process during AVA's 2006-2007 renovation, which Bente went into in detail. Lennon has taken photographs for most of his life, but became more focused on his artwork after his youngest son graduated from high school. He frequently participates in AVA's group and members' exhibitions, so please join me in welcoming Mark.
Okay, I guess I'll unjump the gun. So once again, rather than prepare anything terribly formal to say, I just grabbed a year's worth of pictures, not all of them, just a small set of, just to sort of show examples of what I like to take pictures of and what's important to me, and mostly I just love to do this. It just gives me an excuse to be outside, almost with the exception of a couple sets of pictures that I've ever taken. Almost everything I do is outside. It gives me a reason to go outside, and more than anything else, it gives me a reason to slow down, because I run a business, I have kids, I have my mom, who I love dearly, I hang out with a lot, And when I go out in the woods, you know, oftentimes it's like, okay, I'm going to climb this mountain now, or okay, I've got 8 miles to go. But when I go out in the woods to do this, I just go. And there's some pictures not here, but you know, I started out into the woods and found a little waterfall and never got past that waterfall, about 15 feet after I started off into the woods. And that was a beautiful day. I didn't need to do more than that. Other days I'll tramp 7 or 8 miles. And you know, maybe not take one picture because the images just aren't speaking to me or something else is. So anyway, it's just the images that I was thinking, it's sort of like being a butterfly collector. You have a net called a camera, and you know something's out there, and if you're me, and you sort of know what you're looking for, you have an idea of what species are out there and what you might find. And some days you go out with your net and you don't find a damn thing. And some days you go out with a net and you find a whole herd of exactly the butterflies you're looking for. And some days you go out with a net expecting to find monarch butterflies and you find blue katydid butterflies, and it turns out to be even a better day than you ever expected. And that's really what it is for me. It's just like going out and keeping your eyes open. And as I said earlier, it's one of the few times I just do keep my eyes open and forget about everything else. So this is New Jersey in the wintertime. South Jersey, the Pine Barrens. I don't know if any of you have spent any time in the Pine Barrens. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a third of the state of New Jersey, which is essentially unpopulated and federally protected. This is in New London. And this is the same day, and these pictures are just sort of here, but this is surface of the water with an exposure long enough that you can sort of catch the flow of light and the flow of the water and the colors underneath. And I take a lot of pictures of water because a camera can sort of let water flow through time. And we can't, and painting can't, but a camera can sort of do that. And it's really fun to come home and see what you've got. It's a way, it's different from a butterfly collector. You know, a butterfly collector sweeps his net through the air and there's something in it. Whereas with a camera, you sweep your net through the air, but you don't know what's in it until you get home. And sometimes you say, wow, that's cool. And sometimes I'll take 50 pictures and say, wow, they all suck. This is another wintertime picture. This is also in New London. Just love and again, this is something you can't see with your eye. And I took 3 or 4 exposures, of which this is the one that I think sort of most captures the flow of the water over the rock and around the rocks at the top. This is another water picture. I don't think it's really that good, but it's sort of, you know, again, just like what's there. You know, there's just water flowing over a rock, and if you look at it, you don't see this. There's no way to see this, but you can tell the camera, okay, I'm just going to leave you open for a quarter of a second, and you're going to show me what it looks like, the flow. It's really not a picture of water, it's a picture of something flowing in light and dark. So this is a springtime picture, and you're going to see several that look more or less like this, and you're going to find that it's no surprise that my favorite painter is Cézanne. I just love the way the surface of the water can break up a reflection into these little planes. And, you know, Picasso didn't invent it. It's just there for all of us to see. Except, again, we can never see this because it doesn't exist to our eyes, because our eyes can't stop the world the way the camera can. And so I take a lot of pictures of reflections because they are just so darn cool. And if you look around here, there's a bunch. And that's really the reason. You know, I don't do drugs, I never did. My brain didn't like them, but for me, this is sort of as close as I can get. It's like, well, I don't know, so I don't do it. But anyway, this is just so spacey. It's like, wow, this is like right there under our eyes. This comes from Grafton Pond, and you know, you see a lot of pictures, you see a lot of people out there with their big, long lenses taking pictures of loons. And I can't compete taking pictures of loons with big, long lenses because there are a lot of better photographers than me for things like that. And B, on the few times I've tried, I've discovered that the loons ceased to be loons to be enjoyed. They became objects to be photographed. And it's like, well, this is no fun. I just want to sit here and watch the loons. And if I want to take pictures, I'm going to go find this spacey stuff that other people aren't taking pictures of and try to take pictures of that. This is another picture from Grafton Pond. If you go out onto our lakes in the early first half of June, you'll see a bazillion of these beautiful irises. And I do take a lot of pictures of the irises above the water because they're very beautiful, but also a lot of pictures of the reflections in the water. Again, because it turns it into a Cezanne. I'm not a good drawer or painter. But this is there. I mean, Cezanne is there. I don't have to do anything except point my camera at it and just create Cezanne.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Here's another spacey one. I love what you know, the movement of the surface of the water can do to things like tree trunks, and then find this yellow stuff. God knows where that comes from. You know, it's one or two leaves somewhere high up in the tree, but the you know, they're reflected down on top of the bowl of the tree trunk. And there's a picture. So wow, that's cool. I guess that's part of the reason I do this is there's so many wow, that's cool things out there, and slow it down and just not moving through the landscape, but you know, not being part of it, but really seeing what's there helps me find it. I take a lot of pictures of flowers. I think this year I just chose 2014, and in 2014, as it happened, I didn't take many pictures of flowers. I do a lot of hikes in the White Mountains during the summertime and take a whole lot of pictures of bunchberry flowers and little rhododendrons that grow way up high. But same thing, it slows me down. I don't just say, okay, I'm going to climb North Twin today. I say, I'm going to climb toward, head up toward the top of North Twin, and if I get there, so much the better. If I end up halfway up taking pictures for 2 hours and then it's time to go home, that's fine. So these come from the Hay Estate, and if you know the Hay Estate, anybody who goes to the Hay Estate, again, I find just being there with a camera makes me stop. You can go walk around the Hay Estate and say, yeah, this is beautiful. But being there with a camera lets me say, wow, this is a really gorgeous, little tiny image. And so I just see a lot more. This is another cool one from Grafton Pond. I sort of don't remember exactly where this comes from. It's a summertime picture, but there's a lot of color in it for the summertime. So there may have been some leaves changing early. I will admit that sometimes I rock my kayak to get some waves going because it's too still. Most of the time I think that's cheating, so I don't.
So those colors are all there, obviously, without, if it were totally still, but they'd be to points of colors, I guess.
That's right. Or you'd see whatever it is. You'd see, the reflection of the trees and the trunks.
Right.
But the movement of the water, the waves and the wind just turns them into patterns of color. Yeah. And sometimes the patterns of color, I think there are some here where you'll be able to see more what the reality was, and sometimes a lot less of the reality.
As you said, we wouldn't see that with the naked eye. A lot of it, we don't see that spread of color.
No.
Just see a spot.
What you'd see here is just shimmering green, because these waves are moving, and you'd see the waves moving and the colors sort of flashing across them, but our eyes can't stop that. So the camera said, okay, here's what happened at this instant. And like Bente said, that instant is gone, that instant. And if my finger had clicked the shutter 50th of a second later, it would be a totally different picture. So it's just, it's gone. It's all gone.
So Mark, are you using slow shutter speeds like you do with waterfalls on this shot too?
No, these are usually pretty fast.
Okay.
Yeah, these are fast, usually, and I can't do a lot of this photography when it's dark out, because I need usually at least a 500 to stop it enough. Yeah, so it's like it's a totally different. This is one. This is just another thing I love about taking pictures with water is it makes the colors a lot deeper, and it gives you a really different depth of field, because if you look at this, it's sort of a plane out there, but when you take a picture of it, this part might be 2 feet away from me, and that part might be 200 feet away from me, because that reflection is going all the way from me to the shore of the lake. And so it gives you some spacey effects that, again, you wouldn't get if you just took a picture of that landscape. This is, these two are really beautiful. I love these two. This was a day in early September, and I just got out there early and the sun was slanting in, and you just, again, you don't see it. And the folks who are coming out to look at loons will get there at 9 o'clock and this is all gone. Whereas I was like, okay, well, morning's good because it's before the wind comes up. I'm going to get some good still water to play with. And on this day, it just happened to have this incredible mist and the sunlight slanting in like that, and it's the still lake and perfect reflection and little bits of color on the trees in the background. And it's like, wow, this is so cool. This is so cool. And I'm here and no one else is. But that's not, I mean, that doesn't really matter. But it's really fun. I guess I should say, I don't spend a lot of time, these are all digital images obviously, and I don't spend much time, I don't use Photoshop, I just actually use the software that's projecting these, which does nothing more than, I can saturate the colors a little bit, I can make the darks darker or lighter, make the lights a little darker, but just very simple changes, and really my only goal is to bring out what was there that made me want to take the picture in the first place. So, like that picture a couple ones ago with those intense green reflections, it probably wasn't quite that green. I probably saturated those colors some, and maybe heightened the contrast some, but that's really it.
And Mark, usually your pictures just have the reflection part. You're showing us now your
Yes.
Sometimes you do that, and then would you like cut in and do the? I don't think I've seen any here that have water
that have like the real world in
I'm
it?
asking, yeah, I'm just wondering, because I was like, oh yeah, I'm kind of doing this kind of here.
Yeah. In this case, I mean, this stuff is just so cool.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's like the picture just said, this is what the picture is. Yeah. But like most of the pictures of reflections, if you looked at the trees, they're just boring old trees. I mean, it's like, it's just a crappy snapshot. Whereas if you do something with the reflection, it's like, wow, that's cool stuff. At least for me, I ultimately do this for myself. This is one the same day, and this is another real world picture. And so the sun was coming up behind this crazy tree with all these spider webs on it. It's just like outrageous. It's like, wow, that is so cool. And then I think, oh, I thought I had the reverse of that, because I took a couple of pictures of this tree reflected in the water. Here's just a pure spacey one, and you asked what you'd actually see when you see these tree trunks in white. It's probably a birch tree, almost certainly a birch tree. But all you'd see on the surface of the water is these weird white lines going whoosh, 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 as the waves cross it. And so this is something that just doesn't exist, except that for that instant when the camera shutter clicked, it did exist. One problem I have with these photos, and I usually go out in my kayak. The lower you are to the water, the larger is that expanse across the water that you need to capture and get in focus. So I have a lot of frustration sometimes because, as you see here, this part of the picture is in a lot better focus than the front and the back, for the same reason that the front is 5 feet away from me, the back is 100 feet away from me, and there's no camera in the world that can have that big of a depth of field, especially not the kind I use, which can't be terribly sophisticated or expensive because I'm out in the woods and fields and I drop it in the water, and I'm not going to do that with a $2,000 camera. So a canoe is better for me than a kayak, except of course a canoe is slower and more prone to get blown around in the wind. And some of my most favorite pictures are when I happen to catch and there are a few of these in a little bit, where I happen to catch a pond or a stream where I can be up much higher, shooting straighter down, because it's much easier to get a lot of picture in focus. I'm a lot less frustrating when I get home and say, damn, that would have been great, but half of it's out of focus.
How
have a question about that.
Yeah.
With the green, that is really beautiful green. I'm just wondering, did that sort of pop out more when you sort of, did you do an adjustment of the glass?
I probably saturated it some, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is gorgeous. I just, wow.
Yeah. When I work on them, I basically give myself a rule that I can spend about 15 seconds fussing with each image, and I can do that up to 4 times. And then I have to move on to the next picture. So I have on my computer, and you can see them if you want to, there's a zillion of them here. But the original is always there, and then you can see the changes that I do. It's also very interesting to see sometimes, you know, I'm trying to make each one look as good as I can. It's interesting sometimes they're very different. You know, sort of, anyway, a little crazy. This is I really love to take pictures that are more or less black and white when it's particularly good in late fall and winter before the streams freeze over, because you get a lot of really stark contrast between branches and then the dark water. This is this is a very different side of the pictures I take. It's just structures and just very formal. You know, there's a few of them here, but just very rigid, not much motion to them. In this case, not much light to them. I can't tell you why I like to take these pictures, I just do. This is on the Andover Rail Trail, so I'm sure well, it starts right here. That's right out back. So this is somewhere down in Andover. This is a bridge, and it's down at the bottom. You're looking into the water under the bridge, and that's a girder, a rusting girder. And this was taken from essentially the same place, and is a wave on water. Was a still part of the river. So instead of the waves moving across the water, the waves were very still, and this interesting little pattern just didn't move. So this is not a fast exposure, this is probably a 100th of a second. But then in the lighter part here, and in the darker part, you can see through the surface of the water to the rocks on the bottom. So that gives it some space and color and texture, which aren't there just in the surface of the water.
So that's water that's not frozen?
That's correct. That is water that's flowing and a wave that is standing. It's a standing wave. So the water is flowing smoothly over the surface and the wave stays in the same place. So that reflection changes. Well, it changes slightly, but that reflection is always there. Here's another picture from that rail trail. Everyone seems to have painted their bridges blue at one point. If you remember that picture from South Jersey, they had a blue bridge, and there's another blue South Jersey bridge over on that wall there. So Boston and Maine was blue, right? I'm thinking that it's probably because it was Boston and Maine. But anyway, this is just the flaking and the structure and the rivets and the different colors. No. Again, it just made me stop. You know, I probably stayed at that bridge for a half hour and probably took 30 pictures of 10 or 15 square feet just because it's like there. Whereas if you're on your bicycle trying to get to Boscawen, you just go to Boscawen and across the bridge. So, as I do often too. This is another sort of just stop and look. It's like what's there right in front of you, you know, and I have gazillions of pictures of bolts and old little, ties that hold down railroad rails. Just taken with a macro lens. This is taken with a macro lens, just to get way up there because there's like all this stuff going on. There's all this incredible texture. There's the shapes. There's this incredible color, and that's probably enhanced a bit. But it's all there. You know, you don't have to invent it. You don't have to go beyond the rail trail here in Lebanon to find this stuff, which is really, really cool. And just take it home and then you can say, wow, that's cool. this is a really cool day. I monitor a couple of easements for the Osborne Sargent Land Trust, and this one easement has these ponds on it, and so I do this in the fall when the leaves are changing colors, and if it's a good day like this, there's a breeze blowing across which is dropping needles and leaves in and creating the ripples when they land, and then there's the color, and this is a case where I'm pretty high up above the surface, so I can shoot down and get some more sort of in focus and realistic reflections than would otherwise be the case, or than I could do from my kayaks there. So this is a bunch of birch trees with the leaves and the white trunks, and here you can see it's a picture of a reflection because there's a white pine set of needles floating on the surface. But again, it's, you can't see this. You're standing there and you say, wow, that's a pretty reflection. And if you weren't there with a camera, you'd say, wow, that's a pretty reflection. What do I do with it? But I get to stand here for a half hour just saying, I'm going to do something with these because they are so pretty cool.
What created the event? Is it
That's
underbrush?
leaves. No, that's changing leaves. So this is middle of October, so this is the height of leaf season. But there are a bazillion photographers who can take much better pictures of leaf season than me. If you're talking about landscapes and real trees, but this is like what I can do. So
You said that you might take 30 pictures in half an hour or something. And then you said when you get home, you see what you really have. But I'm assuming you check the screen after every one to get a general idea of whether you want to do something differently, or?
Generally not.
Really?
No. Because the images are so ephemeral, it's not like I can go back to this and say, I want to move 2 feet to the right, because the wind will change. In this particular pond, it's got big herds of floating needles and leaves that sort of, when the wind is on it, they get pushed across. So 10 seconds later, it might be totally impossible to even stand in this place and get an image anything like this. So the answer is no, I don't, but I will say, okay, I know there's this stuff here I like, and so I'm going to take this picture and then I'm going to use a slower shutter speed to get it a little fuzzier, or I'm going to use a faster shutter speed to try to... I fuss with shutter speeds much more than apertures. This is, I don't know if this is the same bunch of trees, it's probably the same bunch of trees. And to answer your question, this is 5 seconds later, 10 seconds later, 2 minutes later, I might have walked across the pond and come back. And it's a totally different picture. This is same batch of leaves, but I just said, okay, I'm just going to take a picture of leaves, forget the boles of the trees. I'm just going to take this. And a little ponds are best for this kind of effect because they tend to get sort of ripples going in multiple directions, whereas a big pond like Grafton Pond, usually you have waves like that, which create a totally different scene to photograph. Here's something in the real world, and again, it just forces me to stop. This is just 2 oak leaves, one that's greener than the other. But I just love the pattern and the way the colors fit together, and it's another macro picture, and just you get to see there's just so much texture there. And once again, just walking through the woods, you usually don't see that. And actually, with your own eye, you probably couldn't see that because most of you are sort of like me, getting old, and your eyes don't focus like this anymore. So you can't see that amount of texture, but it's all there. And you also can't get close to a pair of leaves like that and just stop yourself and observe what's right in front of you, that couple of, that's what, maybe 2 inches by an inch and a half. You just can't force yourself to focus on an image like that, even though it's there, because you'll be distracted by the wind, you have peripheral vision, whereas the camera can just go right there, and that's it. And looking through the camera, you can force yourself to do that, which is another thing I like to do. This is different bridge, different railroad, but I think it's also Boston. But same thing, just formal and fun, you know, it's just a nice composition. I had to prove that I actually can take pictures of loons, so there's 2 loons, a mother and a baby. This is a reflection on a very still night with a flash. So you're seeing the evening sky, and the flash is giving the color to those leaves. But very still, because you can't even tell it's a reflection, except that the colors are so deep. And if you were to take a picture of that bush, it would just be a boring picture of a bush. Also because you're looking at the bush like this, you know, and there's no way around that as a human being. Whereas this picture, you're basically taking it as if you were a fish looking up at it. So you get a totally different perspective on what is there than if you said, I'm going to take a picture of that bush. This is a waterfall with a leaf behind it. And again, it's something that doesn't exist because we can't see it, and it's gone. You know, the instant, this is probably a 30th of a second. I love to go out and take pictures of waves and waterfalls because, you know, you can take a picture of it, and sometimes, often I'll do this, is just take the same picture starting at, say, 100th of a second and run it up to a half a second, or even longer. And it's just a totally different picture. You'll be looking at the same wave, and you'll say, wow, this has got to be in a different continent. This is that same waterfall, actually, or a few feet away. Sometimes these cool things happen. That's just a, you know, a little tiny bit of water just flopping through the air. But with a longer exposure, you can't see the water. All you can see is the reflection of the light. And the same thing, you know, this is just mist that you can't see. But if you leave the lens open long enough, the mist comes into existence.
What is that focal length?
I'm sorry?
What is that focal length? It looks like it's probably long.
It's probably about 100, because I had to be far enough away that I wouldn't be getting splash on the camera. Yeah, that's one of my worries, is splash on the camera. Yeah, so I was probably, it's probably actually a little longer now. I was probably like 6 or 8 feet away. So focusing in that place. So that's probably more like 200 millimeters. It's a automatic zoom. So I don't know until after I've got home exactly what it is and look at the numbers on it. This is, I like this picture a lot. This is a waterfall in New London. I've probably spent more time with this little waterfall than any other single place in the last 3 or 4 years taking pictures. But I think I put this here because there's the same picture at like the 1/1200th of a second. And there's that picture, that's probably a 50th of a second. That's a totally different picture. It's like, you know, you could be somewhere totally different. I tend to like these more than the capturing the water. Here's another pair. This is actually the same waterfall. So this again is probably 1/1200th of a second. So you can catch the individual leaf going over the lip of the waterfall and the individual bits of texture on the surface of the water, which once again is something we just don't see, can't see. And then here's that same little sliver of waterfall, at probably again a 50th of a second, where all it is color and light and motion and pattern. And like I said, I sort of like the color and light and motion and pattern better than I like the frozen water, although that's not bad to me.
Those are identical frames?
Yeah, I don't believe I was using, I'd have to look. I think it's almost exactly, it's the same, you know, here's the same wave.
Yeah.
But if I wasn't using a tripod, it's not exactly the same.
I assumed you would.
Yeah, to do that I wouldn't, and I'll go down to about a 30th of a second without a tripod, and if I'm slower than that, then I'll be using a tripod. I'm betting I was using a tripod here just because I had to be pretty far away. So with a long lens and a slow exposure, I must have been using a tripod, otherwise it'd just be shaky. This, I'm not sure this is a real good picture, but it's just a little pond, not a pond, just a puddle in the trail. So you've got the fuzzy things are leaves floating on the surface of the pond, and then the stuff that's in focus is a reflection of the trees and the sky way up. And sometimes I'll take pictures focusing on the leaves on the surface, so you'll have a fuzzy background, and sometimes like this, the reverse, you'll have the backgrounds, the trees 50 feet away in focus, and the surface of the water all fuzzy. This is, it's not a great picture, but it's an example of the way doing this makes me just stop. This was the same day as this, and I was just walking through the woods getting home. I went off the trail, and this was just a little river of water, just a little tiny stream coming down after a rain, and going over this little teeny ledge, and you can't really see it, but it was creating like a clear umbrella of water over the leaves behind it, and just sitting there looking at it, it's like, wow, that is so freaking cool. And it turned out that I couldn't capture it with the camera, because the camera can't do everything. But again, it just made me stop. And it's the kind of thing that if you weren't thinking about capturing something in a frame, you just walk on by. There's another real world picture, one of my few. This was just a nice afternoon with a late fall afternoon. There's another real world picture, just to prove that it's possible. And another, that's a waterfall in New London, the waterfall just slowed down. I love in the fall particularly when you can have the bright leaves that are perfectly still against the motion of the water. This is Mount Sunapee, just a December, late November hike. And again, it's maybe not the best picture, but it's just like if you're out there doing this for the purpose of seeing cool stuff, that is not like the vista from the top of Mount Sunapee. It's like, wow, this is like a really interesting, intricate pattern, like black and white stained glass or something. And it just, again, for me, gets me to stop and just take my time and open my mind and brain to seeing and thinking in different ways. This is, for me, an example of why it's so damn hard to take pictures of landscapes. And this is a trip my mom and I took a year ago, December. And this is taken from Sugar Hill, looking over at Mount Lafayette and Lincoln. And it was the spaciest thing. It was perfectly calm. And there are these gray clouds just hovering above the landscape like flying saucers. And we just got there and we're just dumbfounded because it was so gorgeous. But for me, and there's, I'm sure, photographers who could make the most of this, it's like, well, if I take too much of the picture, then these mountains look small and insignificant, which is sort of like this. Or if I focus the camera in, then the mountains overwhelm the picture and you can't really get the sense that it's like a whole broad panorama you're looking at. And I just felt sort of stuck. I mean, it's a really nice picture and it could turn into a postcard, but in terms of capturing the feel of what we actually saw that day, it's like 2 orders of magnitude less than what we actually saw. And I thought these were going to be so good, and I fussed with them and fussed with them and fussed with them and tried to make them better. And it's just like, well, it's not what my camera. And again, there are people whose cameras and aesthetics will capture this, and you would say, man, that's a great photograph. It's just not me. This was, I don't know if you remember, we had a huge rainstorm on Christmas Eve a year ago. So this is on Big Nell Brook in Springfield, Enfield. And it was just massive. This was Christmas Day. And so we just had this outrageous, I think these next to it, it's the same little waterfall. But again, you turn the picture sideways and capture, a slightly different shutter speed, and it becomes a very different picture. This is just an outrageous day. I felt this was when we lost most of our snow a year ago. Thank goodness it came back.
I assume a very high percentage of the photos that you take are handheld as opposed to tripod?
Yes. Unless I really am, well, like I said, I'll go down to about a 30th of a second by hand, and slower than that I'll be with a tripod. That's actually a good question. This is a bunch. This is all with a tripod because it was a very dark day. This was, again, December. So in order to get enough light to make a decent image, this was a tripod picture. This is the surface of the water looking back up on a day. It's sort of something like out of J.R. Tolkien. Again, in London. I don't go very far. This was the same batch of pictures. This isn't a very good one. I don't know if I did this one. Same batch of pictures, but here with a lot of light, so it looks like black and white, not any color anywhere. This is that same waterfall that same day. Just headed home and it was getting really dark, so this is probably like a 2-second exposure to get that. And it just becomes sort of an abstract at that point, which I love. This is the Mullica River in Pine Barrens again, one of my favorite places to go. I grew up in South Jersey and my mom has continued to live there, so every time I go to South Jersey I just get in my car, drive down to the Pine Barrens, park my car and get out and walk around with the camera. This was a really spacey day, just no leaves on the trees, gray sky, but the sun almost coming through the gray sky. So just some really spacey sun pictures with the dark contrasting. And this is a slow-moving stream, but it's got a really rough bottom, so that the surface of the water is always in motion. It's never smooth, but it's not big waves. It's just like, these odd swirls and eddies, which allow the big reflections to keep their integrity, but the little branches get all scattered into just little tiny bits of darkness. This was a really good day. I really liked it. It's a good day. And you see here that sometimes I'll just stand in one place and take a lot of very similar exposures. This is just capturing more of the breadth of what I'm seeing, whereas this one is focusing on a much narrower chunk of that reality. And then because I am an environmentalist, and because I love the Pine Barrens, and because a lot of people abuse the Pine Barrens, there is a picture of Slim Jim Fox. It's actually a good picture. I was just messing around taking these pictures because it was just so gross. I'm out here taking pictures of this stuff. It's like, wow, this is so cool and wild. I just love being here. And 10 feet away, there's that. And there's that. I like that picture too. It's like the can is hiding in the leaves. A little Aquafina bottle. I love that one too. I think that's a very good picture. I like that. And that's it. I'll leave you with a Coors Light.
Thank you.
But obviously, if you'd like to see other pictures, there are all zillions of them here. There's a bunch on the wall.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So do you remember the first time that you saw one of these reflections that you did? Obviously you're going doing them now, and that's what you're going to see when you get on your computer. Do you remember the first time you looked, took pictures, went back to your house and said, whoa, look what I just did? There must have been that initial time when you first did that.
It's not so much the first time I went back and said, whoa. It's more like the first time I was on the water and looked down and said, whoa. That's
So you-
cool.
So you saw it with your eyes first? And
Yeah.
knew that that's what you were taking back?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it would be on Grafton Pond, and it would be on a day, and I don't know if I have any. But when the white birch tree trunks, they'll just and that would be the first time I said, wow, that is so cool. Is it possible to do something with that? Yeah, yeah. This is actually in the post-Edgar graduation. That's the first hike I went on. And this is a leaf under about 6 inches of new black ice on Lake Solitude. And so the new black ice, you know, it's got these perfectly straight air bubbles coming right up through it. And that day was the first time I just looked down and said, wow, that is so cool. And so I stopped and took pictures of that for about 15 minutes, and then found some others that were sort of like it and took pictures of them for 15 minutes. And that for me was the first time I just said, wow, what if you just stop and don't take landscape pictures, don't take snapshots, but look to see what's there. So that's why this
that
is
was
here.
your inspiration?
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Buy a picture if you want. I'd love if you do, but you don't have to.
Do you use fixed lens?
I'm sorry?
Fixed lens or?
No, and I was going to bring my cameras. They are just high-end point and shoots. They're just.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're like close to the top end of Canon's point and shoots. Yeah, yeah. And I used to, years ago, I'd go out hiking with an SLR and I'd have this, and it's just such a hassle. And you know, the images you can get with a good point and shoot now are so good. And it's just, you know, if I'm in a kayak, I just have it right here. I just pull it out with one hand, take a picture, put it back, or the
So
same
it
if
has a
I'm
zoom
walking.
on it, so you-
Yeah, yeah.
But then you can attach, you do attach it to a tripod occasionally.
Yes,
So-
yes, if I'm out taking pictures of moving water and
How do you,
water.
I don't know much about it, how do you trip the lever on it? If it's on a tripod and it's so speedy, you have to use.
I put it on a 2-second delay, so I just hit
Oh, I see.
hit the shutter, and then
Yeah.
2 seconds later it takes the picture.
I was positive you were using SLR. Is it always out there with all the lenses and all that? But you carry all the stuff.
No,
I
no,
was like, how do you do that?
no, no. I just,
Not appealing.
no, it's not. It's not. And you know, I see people like taking pictures of loons and such. You know, it's just cameras, and it's like, man, you know, that's not what I'm here for.
So you mentioned macro, you weren't talking about a macro lens per se, but the setting on the.
Yeah, exactly. Macro setting on. Yeah, the macro settings on every camera I've used is a macro setting.